When I signed the lease, I laughed at the one rule the landlord gave me: never look at the hallway after midnight. I thought it was some old urban legend meant to scare newcomers. But last night, my clock struck 12:01, and I heard slow, deliberate footsteps echoing through the hall. Against my better judgment, I peeked through the crack in my door, and what I saw wasn't just wrong, it was impossible. The thing in the hallway wasn't human, but it knew my name. When I first found the apartment listing, it felt like a miracle. The rent was low, the neighborhood was quiet, and the photos made the place look like something out of a cozy city living blog. I'd been searching for weeks, and nothing had clicked, either too expensive, too far from work, or so rundown that I could feel the mold through the screen. This one, though, was perfect. It even had those creaky wooden floors I've always liked, the kind that feel like they've been walked on by decades of lives before yours. The day I met the landlord, I remember how quickly we went through the paperwork. He was polite, but his eyes seemed tired, like he hadn't slept properly in a long time. Just as I was about to leave, he handed me the keys, hesitated for a moment, and said, almost as an afterthought, "One thing, never look at the hallway after midnight." He said it so casually I thought he was joking. I laughed, asked if that was some kind of tradition or superstition, but he didn't laugh back. He just nodded and repeated, "Never look." I chalked it up to an old man's eccentricity. Every building has its quirks, right? Some people believe in lucky numbers, others in knocking on wood. It was just part of the charm, or so I told myself. At the time, it never crossed my mind that there might be a real reason for the rule. That was before I learned the hard way that he wasn't warning me out of habit. He was warning me out of fear. The first few nights in the apartment were exactly what I'd hoped for: quiet, almost eerily so. The walls were thick enough to block out the city noise, and at night the only sound I could hear was the hum of the old radiator. I started to settle in quickly, unpacking boxes, rearranging furniture, and telling myself I'd finally found a place where I could breathe. That's strange. Hallway after midnight. Warning drifted further and further into the back of my mind, becoming just another odd detail I'd forget to mention if someone asked me about moving in. But little things began to creep in. The first time I noticed it was on my third night. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard a soft creak from the hallway outside my door. I brushed it off. Old buildings shift, floorboards settle, pipes groan. The next night, though, I caught something else, a faint draft, cold enough to raise the hair on my arms, seeping through the gap under my door. It was strange because my apartment's heating was on full blast. I even checked the windows, but they were shut tight. By the end of the first week, I couldn't ignore it. The lights in the hallway sometimes flickered when I walked past in the evenings, just for a second, like a camera flash catching movement. And though I told myself I was imagining things, I started to feel this subtle weight in the air after dark, like the silence was just a little too perfect, like something was holding its breath right outside my door. It was around the middle of my second week when the first real incident happened. I'd been up late, half watching a movie on my laptop, when I noticed the time, 12:07 a.m. Normally, I'd be asleep by then, but something about the night felt heavier than usual, like the air in my apartment had thickened. I paused the movie, sat in silence for a moment, and that's when I heard it, slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway outside my door. They weren't the light taps of a neighbor shuffling by. These sounded careful, measured. The kind of footsteps someone takes when they don't want to be heard but know they already have your attention. My first thought was that maybe another tenant had come home late, but the steps didn't pass my door. They stopped right in front of it. I could feel the hairs on my neck rise. My landlord's words, so easily dismissed before, suddenly felt very real. I held my breath and listened, every muscle in my body tight. Then, so faint I almost doubted it, came the sound of breathing, slow, steady, deep. Not the kind of breathing you hear from someone walking past, but from someone standing still, listening. I wanted to call out, to say something like, "Hello?" but the words never left my throat. The warning echoed in my head, never look at the hallway after midnight. I stayed frozen, barely even blinking, until the sound finally faded away. But even as I sat there in the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there knew I was awake. Over the next few nights, the sounds became more frequent and harder to ignore. At first, it was just the occasional creak or the whisper of movement, but soon I began to notice patterns. The footsteps would always start somewhere far down the hallway, moving toward my door in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Sometimes they stopped a few steps away, sometimes directly in front of me. And the breathing, that deep, steady breathing, was there more often than not. By then, I'd started sleeping with my bedside lamp on, though I told myself it was just because I'd been working late and didn't feel like turning it off. The truth was, the darkness felt heavier here. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was like the shadows were aware of me, pressing in against the thin walls of my apartment. One night, I woke up at 12:03 a.m., heart pounding, with no idea why. Then I heard it, 3 slow knocks on my door. Not loud, but firm, each one spaced just far enough apart to make my skin crawl. I lay there frozen, staring at the door. My landlord's warning echoed in my head over and over. I told myself I wouldn't look. I couldn't look. But the more I told myself not to, the stronger the pull became. I needed to know what was out there. Needed to see it with my own eyes, if only to prove to myself that it wasn't real. That's how it always starts, the little voice that says curiosity is harmless. But that night, it was the voice that made me get out of bed. I moved slowly toward the door, every step making the old floorboards beneath my feet groan like they were warning me to turn back. My hand hovered over the knob, trembling, as if part of me knew that whatever I was about to see couldn't be unseen. I tilted my head, listening. The breathing was still there, deep and steady, but now it was joined by a faint scratching sound, like fingernails dragging lightly against the wall. I turned the lock as quietly as I could, easing the door open just enough to peek through the narrow gap. At first, all I saw was the familiar hallway, dimly lit by that single flickering bulb halfway down. But something felt wrong. The hallway seemed longer. Much longer. It stretched far past where it should have ended, vanishing into a shadow so deep it looked like it could swallow the light whole. Then I saw it. At the far end, just before the darkness began, stood a figure, tall, impossibly still, facing me. Its outline was wrong, the shoulders too high, the head slightly tilted like it was studying me from a distance. I wanted to believe it was another tenant, but no one stands that still. No one tilts their head like that. And then it moved, not forward, not closer. Its head turned, slowly, deliberately, in a way no human neck should move, until I could see the faint curve of a smile. I didn't hear footsteps, but somehow, it was closer now. And in a voice that was far too close to my ear, it whispered my name. I slammed the door shut so hard the frame rattled, twisting the lock until my fingers hurt. My back was pressed against the wood, my chest heaving, every muscle locked in place as though even the smallest movement might draw it closer. On the other side, the breathing hadn't stopped. If anything, it sounded deeper now, like it was leaning right against the door, listening. I didn't dare make a sound. Minutes passed, at least I think they did. Time felt strange, heavy, stretching in all directions. Then came the slow scrape, a dragging sound, moving from the door down along the wall toward the end of the hall. The footsteps followed, soft and deliberate, until they faded into silence. Only then did I realize my legs were shaking so badly I could barely stand. That night, I slept with every light in the apartment on. Not that I really slept. Every faint creak, every hum of the building's pipes felt like it might be something else. By morning, the hallway looked perfectly normal again, short and unremarkable, as if the night before had been nothing but a nightmare. But I knew better. I never looked out there again after midnight. I don't need to. Sometimes, when I'm lying in bed and the world is still, I can hear it, the faint, patient sound of someone standing in the hallway, just beyond my door. Waiting. And though I keep my eyes shut tight, I can feel it watching, knowing that I've already broken the rule once, and that it's only a matter of time before it convinces me to do it again. So if you ever find yourself moving into a new place and the landlord gives you a rule that sounds absurd, listen. Don't laugh it off, don't shrug it away. Rules like that aren't written in ink, they're carved out of fear, bought with sleepless nights, and whispered through locked doors. I learned that lesson the hard way. Now every night, I count down the minutes until midnight passes, and I never, ever, look at the hallway again. Because I know the moment I do, I'll see it standing there. And this time, it won't stay at the end of the hall.